and then selling a practice. So welcome to Dental Nachos and Dentist Job Connect TV. So thrilled to be here with our awesome sponsors and resources. We're going to talk about avoiding transition nightmares. Would my awesome team members there introduce yourselves to the Nacho audience?
This is Eric Melanie and Brandon.
I'm Brandon Collier. We are two of the attorneys in our law practice called Collier and Associates. I've been at this for about 25 years. Eric's been at this for a little less. But our group has been around. I'm guessing we're probably the oldest, longest running sort of dental attorneys in the country. Our practice started in the early 70s, kind of grew out of the American Dental Association. And we, in our law practice, represent doctors. 99% of them are dentists, dental specialists throughout the country on buying practices, selling practices, associate employment agreements, independent contractor agreements, leases, real estate transactions, all transactional work. No litigation, not much at all in terms of estate planning. So our expertise is national in transitions. So
you don't get to go into court and bang your fists on the table and say, you can't handle the truth about this restrictive covenant. That's why I wanted to be Tom Cruise from A Few Good Men Group. Well, I love this topic. I talk about a lot to kind of give some context to our audience before we dig into some questions. We're dentists, and people are calling my office right now for two main reasons: preventative or pain. They're saying, hey, I need to get my 6-month checkup. I want to be a good dental patient. I want to come in and get a cleaning. Or there's people that are saying, my tooth just broke, my crown fell off, I have pain. If you were to share with our audience, what are the dentists calling in about, right? What are they emailing in about to you guys? When you're done this webinar and you open up your email, what are going to be some of the things dentists are reaching out to you about?
Good question. I'd say primarily 90% of our clients are calling to be proactive, to get ahead of matters. Hey, I'm thinking about buying a practice. You know, what do I need to do? Or I'm selling a practice. I'm thinking about retiring in 5-10 years. What are the steps I need to do to get myself set up for success? Some people are calling to undo harm that has been done. And unfortunately, in that case, it's much more expensive to undo past deeds than it is to proactively get ahead of them.
I want to give you some tips, Eric, because when you talk like an insider, people trust you. So I'm going to share with you guys, this is for you two. You should say, you know, when your patient bites on a Jolly Rancher and breaks their crown, don't you wish they called and asked if they should have bit on a Jolly Rancher? And they'll go, yes, I wish they did. Well, that's like when you just sign an LOI or some sort of an agreement and then say, is this good after you've signed it? So I really appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. One of the things I talk about are the 4 biggest decisions dentists make: finding a job, buying or starting a practice, hiring an associate dentist, and then selling that practice. And I'll share, as someone who owns multiple practices, someone who's made errors in working with dual rep brokers, I want to talk about that, someone who's hired associates. What do you see some of the real challenges or crisis causing issues in the buying of practices? Let's kind of jump off with someone is ready to realize their dream of buying a practice or starting a practice. Give us some insight on that.
we see a lot more buying than, let's say, scratch starts.
Gotcha.
We can do that, and there are parts of the country where, and I'm kind of sworn to secrecy on where some of these places are, where you can just go and open. But by and large, it's a much more sensible economic decision to buy a good practice, ideally at a pretty good price or a reasonable price. So to answer the question, not laying out expectations early on from both sides. You know, if I'm Paul, if I'm the associate and I want to come work with you, and I went to dental school in order to have a practice, to have a partner, to own a practice, I'm going to tell you that. I'm not in an aggressive way, but in a transparent way. You know, Dr. Goodman, I've only heard such wonderful things about you, and I'm so privileged to have the opportunity. You have such a good reputation. I want you to be my mentor. And then if all goes well, I'm here for a certain amount of time, and the numbers are rising somewhat, and we're doing well together. I would like to buy in. Or if you are, situation's a little different, you're at the end of your career, I want something put down in writing that recognizes this. And you may say, well, Collier, that's great, but really I just want to have associates working for me for the next 20 years. That's not what I want. Then we'll shake hands and part ways.
Love that.
We're not 5 years in, and I'm wondering when is going to be the time. And I don't have anything put into my employment agreement giving kind of a future, laying out the future arrangements.
I love this. I want to stay with this, both of you. So I say to my wife a lot, the key to success in life is me, not me, Paul Goodman, but me managing expectations,
Right.
because I see dentists do this not right in both ways. So putting pressure on someone to buy in, maybe they just want to be an associate for a while, but then also the stringing of people along. So for the associates out there, I love this. And I know the correct answer is it depends. But how about this? What do you see most of the time? Someone's been working in I got a DM in my inbox about this. They've been working this practice for 5 years. The practice has grown from, let's just say, 1.4 to 2 million. Now they're going to buy in, and the associate feels I shouldn't pay for that increased value. And the practice owner says, now the practice is worth more. What do you see in managing those expectations most or some of the time, Eric?
Yeah, so we see that a lot. And both sides have a valid argument. The associate says, I've worked really hard and I've grown the practice. Perhaps I've brought in new referral sources and, the patients love me, staff loves me, so I shouldn't have to pay for the intervening growth. On the flip side, the owner says, well, actually, I made a management decision because I had an overflow of patients that I couldn't treat. So I brought you in to manage that patient overflow. You're really just riding my coattails, and you really haven't done too much to contribute to the practice, the growth of the practice. Whether that's, it depends on if the associate really did bring in new patients, new business. Both sides have a valid argument. So when we think about when we want to value the practice, there's 3 ways to do it. We can value it when the associate started, which gives the associate the benefit of all that intervening growth and they're not paying for it. Or we could value it at the end when the associate buys in, which gives the owner the benefit of all that intervening growth, but the associate is actually paying for the product, the asset that they're buying, right? They're paying fair value for the practice at its present value.
Yeah.
Its increased value, whether they contributed to that growth or not. Perhaps the most fair approach, and the one that we see most commonly, is to take the average of the 2.
I like that.
It gives both parties credit for the growth or contribution to the growth. So the owner gets the benefit of mentoring and cutting back on their schedule, perhaps transitioning some of the goodwill in the intervening period of associateship, but the associate also gets the benefit of.
I love that answer. I mean, one of the things I share, someone DM'd me recently, and it was over the pandemic, and said, you know what, Paul, you were right. I said, tell me more. People rarely, I said, first text that to my wife, but also he said, I did what you said. I said, oh, great. And this is, you guys will like this. He goes, I created an associate agreement, I think with an attorney too, which I hope that I would want to sign as an associate. And I believe if you do that, you're going to satisfy the other person. So I would say to the seller, if you were in the buyer's shoes, what would you want? And then the buyer the same way. And maybe, I know you guys are dealing with this, what I would call, I guess, friction. Maybe it's not always fighting. I always say, what's the difference between friction and fighting? Because like you had said, both sides have reasonable points. And then, I don't know, Brandon, you've done this for a quarter of a century. Eric, you're less than a quarter century. I mean, both sides really do need each other, right? I mean, the associate can't replicate all those patient relationships they've built up. And then the owner can't necessarily go on the street and just find associate B. Am I right in thinking this?
It is a lot. It's owners looking for associates are complaining these days that it's hard to find good people.
Yeah.
And they are having to pay more. They are having to offer additional fringe benefits like moving allowances and signing bonuses and this kind of stuff in order to attract people. What Eric was describing was totally right. How do you valued at the beginning or the end. What we love in our law practice is having a client who says, you know what, I just want this to work. The money, the details are less important to me. I want to find somebody good. That's really in my best interest over the next 20 years of my career. So on the point Eric was talking about, if you're fighting over valuing it at the beginning or the end, it's more important to the junior person. The money is tighter. They focus more on this. The senior person is going to say, that's fine. If you're a great fit for the practice, I'm not going to be a stickler for a revaluation. The junior person, though, ought to, I'd say, more important than what the junior is getting paid, whether it's 32% of collections or 35% or whatever the fringe benefits are. If it's a practice he or she's thinking of buying into, you really ought to get something put into that contract saying, if we get to the end of 18 months or 24 months, then I will be offered an equity opportunity. Yeah. Doesn't guarantee you're going to get to the end of that 24-month period. You could be fired or quit, but to prevent the stringing along year after year. And then if you leave, you're stuck with a restrictive covenant, assuming those are still going to be enforceable. You give up a lot of leverage if you don't. The employment agreement initially is more than just what's your schedule and what's your compensation.
I love this conversation. Also, as I age through life, right? A medium-aged person, 2 years to a 52-year-old could seem like 2 minutes, and then 2 years to a 28-year-old is like they think massively. So people just have very different emotional outlooks on time. So I love this kind of. Let me just switch gears a minute. Now let's talk about buying your first practice. So you find a practice that's collecting $1 million, has reasonable profit, and a broker says, I want to show this to you, Dr. E. I want you to show it. Sign here. What should dentists be cautious? What questions would you tell your dentist client to ask a broker? I know we're going to get into dual rep. I made some errors with dual rep. I will not mention any names, but there's a national brokerage firm that's sort of like, hey, we'll work for both of you. It'll work out. And it was 2011, and I have at least $50,000 less dollars because of that. And there was no Facebook groups, there's no podcast, and it was on me to get the right advice. At the time, we had used just a traditional attorney. Nothing was wrong with this attorney, but was not dental focused. So I regret that, right? I regret that. So what would you tell dentists thinking, I want to go buy a practice, I'm going to start dealing with brokers, break it down from the most fundamental level? Some good practices, good questions to ask brokers.
So you're talking about the buyer.
Buyer, yes. Buyer says, I'm going to go out there into the internet world, into courses, and I'm going to see these people who represent practices, and what questions and how should I protect myself?
First question is, who's paying your fee? And
I like that. Put that in the comments. Who's paying you?
Getting into the dual representation, if the buyer and the seller are splitting the fee, then I guess the broker is representing buyer and seller, and then you get into the joint representation issues. And can they really represent both parties' interests, objectively? So who's paying? You want to get the agreement, the terms of the relationship in a written agreement, just like any relationship, and then have an attorney review that so that you understand the scope of the relationship, the scope of the what the broker is going to be doing for you, and how you can terminate the relationship if things aren't working out, and how long they would be entitled to a fee if you do.
Let me add one point on this. If I'm a buyer, all I want is access to sellers. And I just wrote a newsletter. I write a biweekly newsletter, goes out to dentists around the country. And just in the last issue, I happen to write on brokers that do joint representation. And the two main problems with this is, if I'm a seller, how do I know I'm getting maybe the best price or the best information? More important than that is, buyers are going to be dissuaded from wanting to deal with me. If I'm a buyer and I've got access to 3 or 4 different potential practices to buy, and one of them requires me to pay $50,000, right, the others don't, well, naturally, I'm going to be a lot less interested in the one where I actually have to pay part of the seller's broker commission. So, it's a big negative. The broker shouldn't be doing it. If I'm a buyer, I'm going to say, I don't care if you just cut to the chase. A buyer should never be paying a broker commission.
I agree with you completely. Just pick a
Yeah.
side. I mean, there's enough good people out there, and hopefully sellers hear this too. I'm an abundance-minded person, and I work with do a podcast with my friend and dental focused attorney Rob Montgomery, who's helped me over the years not make giant mistakes I've talked about. And it's just key to ask people like you guys and say, is this normal, right? So this is where I want to bring to you next. You're delivering great value here, saying, hey, a dual rep broker can burn your nachos, right? It can burn your nachos, and it's burnt mine.
Right.
Let's talk about this. I was taking an Uber home from a charity golf thing on Monday, and the driver said, oh, you're a dentist. I want to go to a dentist, but I don't have insurance. I want to get Invisalign. I said, there's a great dentist in the area. I said, go there and just pay for a cleaning, right? It's probably going to cost you like $250. I believe some dentists are so afraid about paying an attorney that they make so many mistakes that you guys could solve for a fraction of what they pay. Tell us a little bit about engaging with an attorney. Someone's listening going, this sounds like me. I'm going to talk about this next. I'm about to sign an LOI, and I heard Paul, Brandon, and Eric talk. How do they engage with you? Do you make them sign away their second-born? Everyone did the first-born child. That was the first-born. What about the second-born? Who's signing away the second-born?
Yeah, no, we don't want anybody's children. We have
tell
enough.
us about like, hey, what do you do when people engage with you so they don't make big mistakes?
I remember a line I think it was my grandmother said. She said, "Cheap is dear," and not that being sensible with your expenses means you're cheap, but when you're engaged, see, most dentists, most people that go into healthcare are not business people by nature. They're not involved in business transactions. This may be the first one they've ever had. And when you're doing something very important, like signing an employment contract, doesn't seem that important, but it can be. For buying a practice, is a major, might be one of your biggest transactions. If you're buying real estate, there's things you're going to be involved in throughout your career where you should have a lawyer. And I get it. It sounds self-serving because I'm a lawyer, but you should. And if it costs a couple $1,000s to negotiate an employment agreement, or maybe, believe it or not, $7,000 to $12,000, $8,000 to $15,000.
It's the biggest decision in your life, Brandon. I say this all the time. Dentists get mad at me, but I'm a broker, and I go and I talk to older dentists. Right? Traditionally, right now they're male. That will change over time. But I talk to 60 to 70-year-olds, and they've had multiple spouses, multiple houses, in one practice. And I say this with no judgment, just an observation. Some of them are things they couldn't control. Some of them are things they could control. Yeah. But that practice has stuck with them from age 29 to 64, good, bad, or indifferent. And it is the biggest decision in your career, could argue life. But before someone throws anything at our Zoom and say, oh, there's other big, and that's why this ounce of prevention. And we're doing the same thing. It wasn't self-serving of me to say, hey, Uber guy, go see a dentist and get a cleaning, right? I'm telling them, before you get at-home braces or do something, go and get responsible advice, because you guys see bad stuff happen, right? You see people ruin their financial career, their relationships. So as we walk through this a little bit, we're working with a broker. And until I really started talking a lot with Rob Montgomery, I didn't realize this. Why is the LOI important to pay attention to? Some dentists say, it's non-binding. I'll print it out off the internet, right? But why is it important to pay attention to? I would like our audience to learn from you guys about why LOIs are maybe more important than they think.
For a couple of reasons. One, because even though it's non-binding, you're more or less giving your word about what the deal is going to look like. And to go and make changes in the ultimate contracts is a pretty bad look. And secondly, there are going to be some binding aspects to an LOI anyways. Typical LOI says you can't negotiate with anybody else for the next few months.
Confidentiality.
So an LOI is a good start.
And also I'll add in, because Eric, you're awesome, daughter, maybe too young, maybe she doesn't know time yet, but I never give my daughter an LOI that we might get ice cream, because if I don't get her the ice cream, it's going to be a problem. So if
Yep.
you tell a seller, I'm going to pay $870, and even if it says contingent on financing, they don't forget about that $870. So it manages expectations. And I'll share, my brother and I did a deal, pandemic time. We got all the way down to the asset purchase agreement, and it wound up backing out because of the real estate. So the LOI sets the tone for these things. And there's no such, I mean, I'll use a grandmother phrase, Brandon. Good advice is never expensive. Good advice is never expensive. Whether it's $15,000, $25,000, if it prevents you from making an error in something that will impact you. I mean, I actually will say this, people, your decision to buy a practice, you spend more time with your practice than you do with your kids physically, right? You spend more time physically inside of your practice because most children
Sadly,
go to
yes.
college
Right.
at the age of 18. And people are usually spending a 3-decade time with their practice. So that's why the LOI is something I learned the hard way, is not something you just print out off the internet, or you just say, sign here, it's no big deal. And brokers could be, Eric, have you seen brokers be, I want to be diplomatic, not tell the buyer how serious the LOI might be when they kind of just push across the table, and this might be via email or DocuSign, oh, sign this thing here. And then maybe you say to your client, we would have done things differently. Is that anything you've seen?
Absolutely. Yeah, the worst case scenario is when they send you a signed PDF and say, here it
Yeah.
is, sign it, like nothing is negotiable. So the LOI really sets forth a lot of the major terms of the transaction. Who are the parties? What's the transaction structure? What's the purchase price? When's the closing date? Just so that all the parties are on the same page. And if you don't agree to that at the start, then you're having to negotiate that when you're negotiating some of the minutia, and then things get missed.
Yeah.
And the LOI really gets everybody on the same page. And sometimes LOIs can take on a life of their own and become their own contract that's negotiated ad nauseum. But most of the time it's just, hey, here are the terms, go back and forth once or
And
twice.
also I'll share, well, I want to break for a second. You guys, we're going to talk for a little while more, but how can people reach out to you, Eric? What's the best website? You guys are awesome sponsors of our group. You contribute cat photos and also contract content, right? That's Eric, cats and contract content. You can use that for your new podcast.
Yeah.
Eric, how can people reach out to your group, Brandon, if they're just listening right now and they want to
Well,
go
they
to the
can
website?
certainly call us. Our office number is 216-765-1199, or go to our website at collieradvisors.com and scroll through what we do, or go on there and schedule an appointment directly.
And I love you. You guys are famous for the newsletter. So check out your newsletter
Thanks.
on there as well. Now, in kind of our last topic, so we talk about buying. Now I want to actually move to hiring an associate, but I want to look at it from 2 angles. So most of the time people say, new dentist, don't sign this contract that's going to mess up your career. I had a client once and I said, which attorney let you sign such a ridiculous restrictive covenant that you now cannot buy a practice where you want? And they sheepishly said, the attorney I did not hire, right? The attorney I did not hire. So if that person went back in time, they wish they spent $1,200, $1,800, $900, because an attorney would have said in 2 seconds, this is out of bounds. This is out of bounds. Tell me now about the dentist hiring their first associate. You have clients, they bought a practice, they come back to you and say, hey guys, it's responsible for me to make an employment contract with me. Talk to me a little bit, Brandon. The dentist hiring their first associate, the contract shouldn't be adversarial, but it should be an agreement that manages expectations. What does that dentist want to think about?
So the person hiring the associate wants, they want the relationship to work out.
Right.
They want to protect themselves. They want to pay generally what's fair. We're fortunate, for whatever reason, we generally end up with clients, seller clients, senior doctor clients that say, look, I'm not trying to take advantage. I want to do what's right. I want this to work. I know that a good deal is where both sides are a little bit disappointed,
Right.
so to
Yeah.
speak. And so my ultimate goal is I want this to work, and that's music to our ears. So we can pretty much go straight in with a contract that's pretty fair to begin with.
Give me
So
some
we don't-
ranges. Either of you guys can, because I know, and these are ranges. how are most associates being paid? Would you say between 30 to 35% of collections, something with production? Give just some sort of
I'd say-
fundamental numbers.
Do you want to, you take this one?
So general dental associates, we're looking anywhere 30 to 33% of collections. Production 28 to 30% with standard fringe benefits. So continuing education, some vacation, unpaid vacation or paid time off, dues and subscriptions, license fees, malpractice insurance. But we also like the concept of a daily minimum.
I do too.
You know, just building.
I just want to share this, and it's my rant. People talk about being good leaders. You have people that work there. I have people that work for my company. I say to 0% of my employees, hey, everybody, if we make money, you make money. But if not, no money for you today, right? And to me, it's such a emotional thing to be a new dentist thinking, if my patients cancel, I'm not going to make money. And we have actually an income guarantee for every one of our associates from the first day they're there to the last, including specialists. It's usually not a thing. Usually they go beyond it. Tell us, Eric or Brandon, why do you like to see the income guarantee, the daily guarantee? Tell our audience that about that.
At least for the first 6 months. So, Eric said often compensation is based on the associates' collections. And I would throw in there that usually we would often call it net collections, Paul. So
Yeah.
it's so lab, the lab cost is factored in. So it might be collections minus lab times 33%.
Yeah.
So for the first couple months, the collections aren't there yet, and the associate needs some money to live on. So a reasonable daily rate, $800 a day, $650 to $1,000 a day, somewhere in this range. Not so much that the associate can sit back and say, I'm making good guaranteed money. I don't have to push myself, but let's say at least enough to pay the bills. Maybe these days it's maybe $850, let's say.
Yeah.
900, it's negotiable. Maybe it drops away. You wanted the production or the collection concept to exceed the daily rate, but at least in the early going.
I mean, I always say it's a safety net, and safety nets are there because you don't necessarily want to fall into the safety net, right? But if you do, I'm glad there was a safety net there.
Right.
It's as simple as that. And I believe that's one of the reasons. It's not a winning or losing thing, but I work with private practice owners and DSOs daily through Dentist Job Connect every day. And I believe that the DSOs are creating compensation structures which give the new dentist more security. And I would feel the same way. If I had $620,000 in debt and a private practice dentist said, I'll mentor you, but you eat what you kill and you're hunting PPO class 2s. I say, this sounds great, but DSO XYZ is guaranteeing me $175,000 a year. And I have a baby and I just got married. And these are, I mean, do you see things like this in your daily life?
They have truthfully, they have to do that because the DSO jobs are less appealing in a lot of ways. It's a personal opinion of mine. People can disagree on this, and there are some better ones and some lesser DSOs, and that's a whole different topic. But if you're not offering a real equity opportunity, kind of maybe sort of a glorified equity opportunity in the DSO, but not a real one, you got to make up for it with higher starting pay.
And also, I agree with you completely. One of the things interesting is I see awesome private practice opportunities and awful ones. I see awesome DSOs with the DSOs, and Rob and I talk about it. Like I'm technically an owner operator of my business. So if my brother and I, who are partners, if our two associates leave to go be sommeliers in Napa, well, guess what? I got to go do more fillings, right? I mean, I don't want to do it. But these DSOs, no dentist, no practice open, right? So it's like, it's just a totally different thing, right? Like tomorrow, if the associates couldn't come, I don't want to cancel XYZ and do it, but I could, right? I'm a licensed dentist. And I think that's why it's important for new dentists. I mean, Eric, what do you like to make your new dentist clients aware of in the DSO or private practice world, or just any insight on that? It's not a judgment, but just like, what are some aha moments you might point out to them?
Look past the bottom line number, the big flashy in bold and flashing lights number. Peel back the layers. to really see what the deal structure is and what you're really getting and what you can expect. And talk to other people who have been involved with this group.
Yes,
Not-
that I want to say that again. You know, one time I took a CPR class, it was great. And the guy called himself Tommy 2 times. It was a brilliant thing. He goes, if I say it 2 times, you got to remember this. And it was, I mean, honestly, whether you're a parent, a leader, a dentist. So I'll say that 2 times.
Just a Goodfellas reference.
Yeah. Ask somebody who's been there. I always say, anyone, if I was hiring an associate tomorrow and they said, let me talk to you on a previous associate, here's 4, I'll put you on a text chain with them. Go on your own text chain, ask them what you want, because that is key to success. Because one of the most difficult parts about dentistry is very hard to taste test the position. You're working on real people all the time. It's hard to observe. So at least, and I love what you said, Eric, at least ask someone who's been through it so that they can showcase it. And I think anyone who's proud of what they've done is proud to have done that, right? Oh,
You should want to talk.
yeah, my associate's in Perio. I told her this, but I would tell someone, talk to Dr. Jill, and she'd say, at Pennington Dental, you're not going to do endo and extractions, but you're going to work next to guys who care. You're going to next to a team that cares. You're going to do restorative dentistry. If that's right for you, great. And not every job is the right fit. But you also said something again, look past the bottom line, because I love this, Eric and Brandon. You guys didn't sign up to be dentists. I love when a new dentist is like, this office is going to pay me 300 grand no matter what. I'm like, it takes you 4 visits to do a crown. So I'm just letting you know that, like, what they say and what you can do might be not in line. So I love that. As we wrap up, guys, we're going to have another segment on selling. We'll have a sequel like Rocky. I'm from Philadelphia, right. But yeah. Anything that you guys want to highlight before we wrap up for our Dental Nachos audience on any of this?
I got a couple things that's worth mentioning. When it comes to paying fees, you know, if you have, again, analogizing to the dental practice, if you have good patients that have been with you for a long time and you know that maybe they've fallen on hard times, or just you have a policy of letting patients pay over time. You know, I would, you know, in our own practice, we are probably representing Dr. Senior 2/3 of the time and Junior 1/3 of the time. But the juniors have, you know, are more concerned about, obviously, living expenses and what have you. So when it comes to paying legal fees, it's perfectly reasonable, even though, like, for example, most attorneys, including us, bill each month. If young doctors need 6 months to 12 months to pay, that's not a big deal. You know,
yeah.
You know, it's just not. And you know, I get it. People have budgets, and you know, it should be. You should be able to work out an arrangement like that with your lawyer. I think another good thing you would want from your lawyer is not just the ability to look at a contract, but also to have some accounting experience to analyze dental financial statements and tax returns, and to review an appraisal, and to give an opinion on if the appraisal price is reasonable, or it's too high, or it's low and actually a really good deal. There's a lot of value in that sometimes get punted to CPAs, but you know, a good lawyer, you know, somebody with that experience is a valuable member of the team.
Gotcha. I like both those things because it's key, because I mean, the team that we talk about with these attorneys, accountants, bankers, they have to work together well and know what each person does. I mean, if you guys want some dental insider speak, say, when you refer to a periodontist, it's important that you know what they're talking about too. So even though you're not necessarily going to be the person filing taxes, to have the context of, and I mean, a lot of things, I mean, everything, whenever I work with anyone, I wanted them to let me know first if something's like way out of bounds, so we don't have to move forward, right? You know, like if you want to support your 3 children and make more as an associate, make more as an owner, and you're looking at a $400,000 practice, you need someone to be able to tell you right up front that this is going to be a wildly different earning experience than your $300,000 DSO job. And that's why I really believe, like my grandmother was right, Brandon, Eric, dentists are special. I am very special. And we need our own special advisors because, you know, I mean, one thing I'll share is what kind of institution would loan someone who's $600,000 in debt? $1 million? And then the answer is dental banks, right?
Somebody that knows you're going to be successful.
Yes.
Right.
So, but on its face, that sounds crazy, right? Like if your friend came to you with 600 grand in debt and said, please give me $1 million for this business, you would say, not until, but in dentistry, that's what I say. Many people don't like us what the banks do. Eric, how about you? Any wrap up notes for the audience?
Well, I think Brandon should say this because he has a favorite one-liner about the people in the deal. And I think it's a great one-liner, and I think it's good advice for anybody in life in general, not just dentistry. Yes. And it's more important than the deal are the people in the deal.
I like that.
And if you associate with good people, good things will happen. Even if the deal is not great on its terms, if you're associating with good people, the relationship and your future will work out. Even if the terms of the deal are great, but you're associating with bad people,
yes,
it might not work out.
I think that's really so important because we feel the same way about treating patients in our team. And I mean, you guys shared so much value. We appreciate having you as sponsors of Dental Nachos. Dentist Job Connect, people can reach out to us at dentistjobconnect.com. But if someone has listened to the end of this or watched this, guys, and they want to say, hey, I'm ready to take the next step, hire an associate, buy a practice, sell my practice, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you guys?
Call us at our main number, 216-765-1199, or go onto our website at collieradvisors.com. Easiest ways.
Awesome, guys. Well, we could not do what we do at Dental Nachos without your support, and I truly appreciate that. We'll definitely have another one of these. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
You guys hang for 1 second. Great. Perfect. You guys could take us off YouTube too. We have a few people in the waiting room. I mean, in the Zoom room, if you have any questions. You guys are great at this. You got a great two-man show.
That was fun. Yeah.
People, you guys can undo YouTube. We can cut this off at the end. You guys did an awesome job there, and awesome job with everything. And we'll check in on doing like Rocky 2.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, we'll bring in when's Hulk Hogan episode? The Hulk Hogan